with the Super Bowl matchup set between the Eagles and the Chiefs, and we see the Shrine Bowl, the Senior Bowl, all those kinds of bowls going on to see who is going to elevate their stock in the 2023 NFL draft, it's time to do another mock draft. And we're not going to do any trades again in this one. I think there's still plenty to discuss, especially towards the later end of the first round. So let's get right into it. The Chicago Bears, again, a team that I think is going to trade down when it comes down to it. I think when it's all said and done, they are going to trade down. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of picks they get from that. I think there's a few teams that want to move up, and they're going to get quite a bit of draft capital for that. But when you look at what they need, the Bears need some help on the defensive line. And it really, again, is just coming down to Will Anderson and Jalen Carter. I don't think that the Bears trade down super far. So I think that you're looking at the Texans, the Colts, and then even maybe the Seahawks or the Lions when it comes down to that. I think that they are going to take Will Anderson. He's going to be a force on the edge. That's going to be really fun to watch him play. Then you go to Houston. Houston, I think for most people expect them to move up and take Bryce Young. I think that Bryce Young is the best quarterback in the draft class here. I think that he just has proved himself time and time again. The poise in which he plays is incredible. I don't think that there's much that rattles him, and that really helps him when it comes down to making big plays, especially in the Alabama offense that wasn't as explosive as we thought this year. That's going to help him tremendously at the next level. Then you go to the Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals are an interesting team because they are another team that can trade down. You're looking at a team, like I said, like the Bears, that can trade down, that can get what they're looking for in terms of draft capital. And that's really interesting for what they can do. Now, they're going to sit tight here, and they're going to, I think, take a defensive player. I think they're going to work on that defensive line, and it comes down to Jalen Carter or Miles Murphy. And really, it's not a surprise to see them maybe take either or. And Carter is just a phenomenal talent. I think that Miles Murphy is a phenomenal talent. But when a guy like Jalen Carter, who could be the first overall pick, is around at 3, I think you just have to take him. I think that's just a no-brainer there. Then you go to Indianapolis, a team that is looking for a quarterback. They're going to look for some help on offense. Now, they do need some help at wide receiver, but a quarterback is really where they probably should look at this pick if they don't trade up, that is. Then you're looking at CJ Stroud is available, Anthony Richardson is available. And I think that, you could see CJ Stroud go. Then there's the Will Levis debate. We'll get more into him later. But you're looking at, I think Anthony Richardson is more developed than a lot of people think. I don't know if he is CJ Stroud, but I think that the upside is definitely there. So I think that you're going between those two, and shoot, why not? Why would you not take a chance on Anthony Richardson if you're not sold on CJ Stroud? I think that if you're debating between Richardson and Levis, that should be a no-brainer. Richardson is the better talent there. So I think that that's what the Colts end up doing, which opens things up for other teams that maybe thought that Anthony Richardson and Will Levis were going to be the two options. Now, Seattle is interesting because they could go with quarterback, but with how Geno Smith played, I just don't see that happening. I just still don't see that happening. The closer we get to the NFL draft, the more likely I think they stay put with Geno Smith and just go from there. You can always draft a quarterback next year. Now, with the talent that is available, there's some interesting players. Now, we mentioned Miles Murphy before. A guy who is kind of sticking around in the top 10 is Texas Tech's defensive end, Tyree Wilson. He is a 6'6", 270-pound freak who can make things happen on a consistent basis. And that's really exciting if you're a Seahawks fan. So I think that that's a play that they can look at. It's between Wilson and Miles Murphy, maybe a more polished prospect in Murphy, but maybe they go with the potential of Tyree Wilson. That is another option for them. We'll just switch it up a little bit and go Tyree Wilson. Detroit is another team. Again, Jared Goff played pretty well towards the end of the year, so maybe quarterback isn't where they go. Now, with Miles Murphy sitting on the board, you're telling me that you can pair Miles Murphy with Aiden Hutchinson? I don't see how, cornerback is a position of need for this team, and they could very well take that position. But Miles Murphy is sticking around, which he is in this mock draft. I think that you have to take him. You pair Miles Murphy with Aiden Hutchinson, and now you have two phenomenal talents on the edge. And really, if you're facing Detroit, you have too much to prepare for, and that could really hurt what an offense is trying to do against the Lions. Now we go to Las Vegas, a team that is definitely going to need a quarterback, another team that could trade up. There's so many in this first round, just within the top 10. Now, is CJ Stroud still available? I feel like that's a route that they're going to go. Now, I don't know. I'm not one who thinks that Will Levis is going to be the answer. I think that you're looking at CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Bryce Young as a top three for sure. I just don't buy into the Will Levis hype. So for that reason, I'm going with Stroud. Atlanta comes up next, and they need some help at multiple positions, but cornerback is one a lot of teams need corner. And given that we have not drafted a corner and we're at pick 8, I think it's time to get the ball rolling there. We'll go with Joey Porter Jr., a name that most people recognize, 6'2", 200 pounds, natural ball player. And in terms of what he can do when the ball is in the air, a playmaker, and that's going to be fun to see what he can do opposite of AJ Terrell. That is a good combination, and Atlanta is in good hands there. Carolina, a team that could, again, another team that could go with a quarterback here, but maybe they decide that Sam Darnold, they're going to stick it around with him for another year. They are kind of in a rebuilding mode, I guess. And you look at the young talent they have, maybe they're good with struggling through another year to tank, if you will. I don't know if they will tank, but save up for a higher draft pick when a guy like Caleb Williams or Drake May is available. So you're looking at what do they need outside of that? They need some help at wide receiver. That would be an option for you. Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnson are two options. I think that you can do no wrong when you're picking between Johnston and Addison. Addison is a better separator, in my opinion. Johnston is a bigger threat in terms of 50-50 balls, maybe a bigger downfield threat, but I think separation is king in the NFL. And with Jordan Addison on the board, I think that the Panthers go with them. Then you go to Philadelphia. This is a team that, again, competing for a Super Bowl coming up in a couple of weeks. They need some help at cornerback, and not because they're struggling, because they're getting a little older. And I think that you add a talented player to that group, they can learn for a year or two and then finally set foot on the field. Now, a guy that fits that perfectly is Christian Gonzalez from Oregon, a guy who's transferred from Colorado, someone who is still learning the position and developing well. I think that he has a lot higher to go, and that's going to be huge for the Eagles defense. Tennessee needs help on the offensive line. I think with Paris Johnson available here, it's really a no-brainer for me. You could go with Peter Skoronski. You go with Broderick Jones. I like Broderick Jones over Skoronski, but I think that Paris Johnson is the most complete tackle in this class right now. And we'll see what happens as we get closer and closer. But Paris Johnson Jr. is really hard to go wrong, especially with the team that needs help at tackle with some of the players that they're losing. Houston is up again, and I think that's hard for me to see a combination in which they don't go quarterback and wide receiver. So you drafted Bryce Young with pick number 2. Now you need someone to throw the ball to. Quentin Johnston being available here at 12 is a steal, and I think that's what they go through. If Addison was there, they obviously would take Addison. The New York Jets, another team that needs something on the offensive line. Now, Zach Wilson is going to have to prove himself at quarterback, but he's going to need some help throwing the football. He's going to need some time. With the wide receivers that they have, there's no reason why this offense shouldn't be better, and helping on the offensive line will be huge for this franchise. Broderick Jones, to me, is a perfect fit for them. I think that he is a potential dominant force for the Jets, and that's going to help this offense even more and make this team a lot better. The New England Patriots come up next. I think a name that you're going to start seeing more in the first round is Illinois cornerback Devin Witherspoon, someone who has all the physical tools that you're looking for. He has a great mindset when it comes to playing corner, whether that's defending the pass or the run. He is someone that I think fits what the Patriots want, what Bill Belichick wants, and I think that that's a name, again, you're going to see more and more in the first round. The Packers, I think with the reports coming out that Aaron Rodgers is pretty much gone. I think that the reports that we're seeing is that the Aaron Rodgers era in Green Bay is over, which means that a quarterback is now a position of need. Now, you could say that Jordan Love is the answer, but I don't know if that is the case. I think that that's something they really have to look at. And if Will Levis is available, and if everybody's still buying into Will Levis and he's sitting at 15, I think that that's an option that they consider and strongly consider. So that's someone that they're going to take here and they can build towards the future. Washington is up next, and they need help on the offensive line, both at tackle and on the inside as well. A player that fits kind of both of those needs is Peter Skoronski. Now, he is not the most attractive or talented or physically gifted offensive tackles in this class, but he is going to get his chance at tackle. And then at worst case scenarios, he slides in to guard. And I think that he's going to thrive either way. He is someone that was on a terrible Northwestern team, a team that was 1-11 this year, and he was the lone bright spot. I think that he was the most consistent player in that team by a long shot, and he's going to get his chance to prove what he can do at the next level too. Then you go to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, to me, is a group that has a lot of exciting players. I think that they have some young talent that it has a bright future, and the defensive line could use a bit of work. With a guy like Brian Brzee sitting around at 17 still, that is someone I think they consider. I think Mike Tomlin would love having a 6'5", 300-pound defensive tackle on his defensive line. I mean, who wouldn't at that point? Brian Brzee, when healthy, is one of the most dominant defensive tackles in the entire country. And that's going to be something that you'll watch at the next level. Again, if he can stay healthy, he is going to be really good. Detroit comes up again. They're getting their second pick in the first round here, and they need some guys that can help them in the secondary as well. We took Myles Murphy with the 6th pick overall, and now you're looking at corner with plenty of options left at cornerback. This is a group that is very, very talented. I think Jeff Okudah is a star for the Lions. And I think that if you're going to add some help to this defensive secondary, then you're going to have a lot more excitement. This is a group that I love their energy. I love what they can do. Maybe not the most talented in terms of elite tier, but you can fix that. I think that you're looking at potential then with this pick. And another guy that you could potentially see in the first round is Miami cornerback Tyreek Stevenson. Now, he has his flaws, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of upside to be excited about. You look at his frame, the physicality in which he plays, the alpha mentality that he plays with. That is something that Detroit's really going to love. That's something that Dan Campbell is going to love, and it's going to help that secondary tremendously. Tampa Bay is up next, a team that is going through probably another rebuild like a couple other teams here. Tom Brady, don't really know what he's going to do. The reports makes it sound like he's going to move on. So quarterback could be a position here, but you don't really know until you hear what Tom Brady's going to do. It still might be a position of need. However, you're probably not taking a quarterback here because the top 4 quarterbacks are off the board. So now you flip over to defense. You're looking at a guy like Keely Ringo, a physical player who has great speed. I think that that's going to help a secondary that needs some younger talent. So, and that's going to be fun to watch what he can do at the next level. Seattle comes up next, and another team that needs a corner. Tyreek Woolen is a really fun player at cornerback. I think that Seattle's secondary is super underrated, and you can add another player to help that. Cam Smith is a perfect fit for that. I think Cam Smith is becoming one of the more underrated corners in this draft class. Someone who maybe flies under the radar because you're looking at Joey Porter Jr., you're looking at some of those other guys. Cam Smith is a guy who could really help a team. The Chargers are up next. I don't see how adding another talented player to Justin Herbert's offense is a bad thing. And I think that we're talking about names that are flying up into the first round. We talked about Tyreek Stevenson. We talked about Devin Witherspoon. On the other side of the football, a name that you're going to see rise up draft boards in the next couple of weeks is Zay Flowers. He is on Boston College's offense, which has been one of the most frustrating offenses because he hasn't received a ton of help. When you look at what he's produced in the last 3 years compared to the next guy, it is a significant gap. And that is going to help him at the next level. In fact, he might find that he has more help in the NFL than he did at college, which is not something you normally say. Zay Flowers has great speed, great explosiveness, and I've seen some Antonio Brown comparisons, hopefully on the field and not off, and maybe even some of the on the field things we don't really want. But this is a guy who can be extremely dominant, and that's really exciting if you're a Chargers fan. Baltimore comes up next, a team that also needs a cornerback. If Marcus Peters does not come back, they're going to need some help across from Marlon Humphrey. A longer corner with great ball skills is Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State. There are a lot of talented corners in this class, and it's going to be fun to see how many of these guys go in the first round. I think that's going to be the position that gets picked the most in the first round. Even in the first 3 rounds, you're going to see a lot of corners taken because you have a lot of long, big corners, and that's going to be something that helps Baltimore. They can sit tight. They don't have to trade up because there's plenty of options at pick 22. Another team that could take a corner is the Minnesota Vikings. But again, like I said, there's a lot of depth at this position, so maybe they sit tight. There's not really a first round pick that could stand out right here after everything we picked. Also, Minnesota drafted quite a few players in the secondary. They invested in that secondary. So maybe they move on to a different position. Maybe they look at something else. Defensive tackle is something that they're going to need to get younger at. They're going to need to get more explosive at. A player that can help in that regard and who's flying under the radar is Kalijah Cansey. Now, I've seen him go in the top 10. I think that is too high, but I don't think it's out of the question to see him late in the first round. He doesn't have the ideal size that you want in a defensive tackle, but he has the ideal explosiveness. His first step is quicker than probably a lot of offensive linemen in this class, maybe the best of any lineman. He is someone that is super dominant for Pitt. He's been one of the most explosive players for the Panthers. And when you see guys making plays, he's typically one of the first people near the ball. And that says a lot about his ability to get off the ball, to create explosive plays and get in the backfield and disrupt things. That's something that Minnesota really needs going forward. Then you move to Jacksonville. You look at what Jacksonville needed coming into the year, it's very different than what they need now. Now, they still need some help in terms of catching passes from Trevor Lawrence, and tight end could be a position of need. If Evan Ingram's price is too steep, then they're going to need a tight end. And with Michael Mayer sitting on the board, I don't see how they pass on him. I think that is an elite option for them. I think that you're getting a well-rounded tight end that can contribute both in the run and pass games. And that's a really exciting time if you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. You look at how far they went into the playoffs, and now you add some key pieces that could add to an even more exciting team. And that's really fun if you're a Jaguars fan. The Giants up next, a disappointing loss to the Eagles in the NFL playoffs, and now they're looking to move forward. Again, quarterback could be a team need if you really look at it, but with those 4 quarterbacks gone, you're probably not looking at a quarterback until late round 2, maybe round 3. So I think they look on the defensive side of the ball, and an athletic playmaker is Trenton Simpson from Clemson. He is someone that can fly around and make a lot of plays. His speed sideline to sideline and even within the trenches is what helps him blow up plays or negate long runs. That is someone who can contribute right away. He can be a force, and pairing him with Jalen Smith could be really exciting. The Dallas Cowboys are interesting because there's a lot of weapons you could add offensively. And to me, the Tony Pollard injury really, it just sucks because he's becoming a free agent. I think that hurts what he's going to get. And I think that just was a tough injury to watch, not only, but it was just tough for him. He's such a talented player, and his versatility is something that helped that offense quite a bit. Now, they're going to have a new offensive coordinator. Well, actually, Mike McCarthy is calling the plays now because Kellen Moore is off to the Chargers. That means that they're going to have to learn a new system or learn some new things in terminology. But I think that running back is a team need because Ezekiel Elliott isn't the long-term option. And if Tony Pollard doesn't come back, they're going to need some help. If Bijan Robinson, who is a top 10 player in this draft, is still around, somebody is going to pick him up in these next few picks. So it might as well be Dallas and add a phenomenal talent next to Dak Prescott. Now you look at Buffalo, a team that was a disappointing end of their season. I think all Bills fans would agree with that. Their loss to the Bengals was not what they expected and not what they wanted. And I think that you're looking at something they need on defense is help in the secondary. You look at what a guy like Brian Branch can do, that gives you some versatility because he is a safety, but he also has experience in the nickel too. So you can move him around and let him make big plays. That is a good pick for Buffalo. If you ask me, it's going to be really fun to see him on that defense. Cincinnati, I don't care what you say. I am so tired of watching Joe Burrow run for his life half a second after catching the football from the center. He needs some help. He needs some protection. And yes, the Jamar Chase versus Penei Sewell debate can rage on, but I think that Jamar Chase is still a good pick. I don't think that was a bad pick to make. I just think that it's now long overdue that you add a talent that can protect him. You're going to draft a massive player like Osiris Torrance to fix that. You're going to make sure that Joe Burrow does not have to run for his life. You're going to make sure that he finds a way to hit players like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, if he's able to return. You're going to find ways to get them the football because you're going to give Joe Burrow, the best player on your team, more time to pass. Then you look at Denver. Denver is in a tough spot. You're trying to add a lot of things, and you only have one pick. You only have so many picks. And I think that providing more protection for Russell Wilson is probably the way to go. Anton Harrison is someone who could be a first round pick. He's still fairly raw as a prospect, so that is something that could potentially hurt him. But I think that Denver needs some help, and a guy like Anton Harrison has a lot of exciting tools that could be developed. And given that they're kind of figuring things out, there could be some time for him to learn. Kansas City playing for a Super Bowl against the Eagles. Really, really fun team to watch. Really, really exciting to see what Patrick Mahomes has been doing. You look on the defensive side of the ball, Chiefs fans really like BJ Ojolari. I think that's a long player that can make plays. He can use his length better than a lot of people, honestly. And I think that he is a sleeper pick in the first round. I think that he is a underrated player, maybe not a sleeper pick, but just very underrated when it comes down to it, because he is someone who can be very disruptive when he's playing at his best. And that is something that the Chiefs could use, not because they're slacking or lacking in that department in terms of talent, but because they have some older players that could use some help. They could use some more reps from younger guys, and they can pass things along to make sure that Kansas City is playing for Super Bowls long into the future. And then we're going to wrap up this mock draft with the Eagles. Second first round pick for the Eagles, and just the team that just keeps on winning. They're playing for a Super Bowl. They have 2 first round picks. Life can't get much better. And a player that I think can really add to their defensive line, kind of the same thing here where they could add some younger talent. A guy who is going to Another guy who's going to rise up the draft boards, Lucas Van Ness from Iowa, a long player with plenty of life on his legs, plenty of life on his body, because he wasn't a starter right away. He has had not as many reps as you'd think he'd have, but Iowa didn't utilize him as much until more recently. And that's something that's going to save more hits from him. And I think that's something that can add to Philly's defense. Philly's defense is very exciting, a very talented group, and adding Lucas Van Ness seems like the right pick to go and could be potentially exciting for a team that could win a Super Bowl.